This is part 3, episode 127. After entering Dragon City, Hui Yuhao felt much less cold air blowing against him. With the city wall as a barrier, the temperature inside the city was naturally higher than outside the city. Everything inside the city seemed to be very ordinary. There weren't any signs of suffering or misery. Although the streets weren't completely empty, they weren't bustling with life either. In a city as cold as this, the population was bound to be much less than a city in the south. As Hui Yuhao walked forward, he observed his surroundings and sensed the changes. There was a simple soul formation at the top of the city wall. However, there weren't many soul engineers stationed there, and they were only accompanied by a few ordinary soldiers. Given such a defense, the Heavenly Soul Empire could possibly overcome it if they could divide their troops and attack the city with 1 or 2 regular legions. Shrek Academy didn't have any information about this city either. Naturally, Hui Yuhao didn't know anything. In a city, there wasn't a place more suitable than an inn to find out information. Hui Yuhao decided to find an inn and gather information about the situation in Dragon City before making any plans. It was very easy to find an inn in such a cold city. Drinking could warm one's body, and this was why many northerners considered it their hobby. Even some ladies shared the same hobby too. Hui Yuhao soon found an inn and entered. The signboard of this inn wasn't very big. However, Hui Yuhao immediately sensed a bustling atmosphere the moment he entered. A warm feeling swept over him the moment he entered. He felt engulfed by a heat wave, and the coldness he felt in his body immediately disappeared. The size of the inn wasn't very big, and it was much hotter inside this inn. Some people were even sleeveless as they consumed alcohol. There were 4 or 5 tables as well as a bar. There were 20 to 30 people in the inn, which contributed to the rowdy atmosphere. However, the atmosphere also felt very friendly. Hui Yuhao noticed that there were a few scantily clad ladies behind every table and the bar. However, these ladies weren't young. They looked to be in their 30s. Although they were scantily clad, they weren't very physically attractive. They were all dressed in the same way. Evidently, they belonged to this inn. They were there to drink with the customers, but they didn't provide any further services. Even though the customers were also drinking and joking with them, they were seated pretty far away. It seemed like this was a culture of inns in Dragon City. Ladies were only there to provide an atmosphere for drinking. "Welcome, sir." A scantily clad lady who revealed her shoulders and cleavage walked over and greeted Hui Yuhao, who had just entered. She had a strong northern accent. Her voice was very smooth, but it was slightly nasal. Although her yellow dress was very revealing, it also exuded the elegant style of the Heavenly Soul Empire. It was just that the dress was made of slightly inferior quality. "Hi." Hui Yuhao nodded slightly to acknowledge her. "Are there still seats?" The lady in yellow said, "There are only seats at the bar." "Will that do?" "Yes." Hui Yuhao nodded again. The lady brought him to a corner of the bar before sitting down. Hui Yuhao was dressed rather lightly. After all, he came directly from Shrek Academy. Naturally, he didn't need to take off a coat. However, all the customers in the inn were already drunk, and didn't notice this at all. The lady brought a glass of warm water for Hui Yuhao before asking, "Sir, you must be a foreigner." Hui Yuhao nodded, "Yes. Dragon City is really cold." The lady laughed, "You're right. Seeing the way you're dressed, you must be feeling very cold. You'll be fine after having some alcohol. What do you want?" Hui Yuhao said, "Give me something local." "All right, wait a minute then." Not long afterward, a glass of amber alcohol was brought in front of Hui Yuhao. It had a strong alcoholic fragrance. Hui Yuhao lifted his cup and sniffed the alcohol. Suddenly, A strong alcoholic scent swept his nose. Evidently, the alcohol was very strong. As he sniffed the alcohol, he couldn't help but recall how there was too much origin energy of ultimate ice in his body during the tournament in Radiant City, and how he had to rely on distillate to neutralize it. Time had passed so quickly. Wang Donga was no longer with him, and he was now in this northern city. After tasting a sip of the alcohol, a malty, acrid taste filled his throat. It warmed his body as it went all the way into his belly. That feeling was indeed refreshing. Hui Yuhao didn't use his soul power to neutralize the strength of the alcohol. As he sensed the burning stimulation, his face also turned a bit red. Even though he wasn't the most handsome person, he was still very charming, because of his great spiritual power. The lady's eyes brightened when she saw his flush. "Sir, where are you from?" Hui Yuhao said, "I'm from the south, and I'm here to visit a friend." The lady smiled and replied, "You must be careful then. It's wartime now. Don't go to war-prone places where there's a lot of fighting." Hui Yuhao wasn't moved as he said, "I heard that Dragon City has already." The lady didn't hide anything from him and responded to his question. "Yes, Dragon City has already been occupied by the Sun Moon Empire. We were initially very worried, but it seems like things aren't that bad." "Oh?" Hui Yuhao was a little astonished as he looked at her. He asked, "How's the war situation?" She replied, "Ordinary citizens like us wouldn't know anything. At least the Sun Moon Empire hasn't done anything to ordinary citizens like us after occupying Dragon City. Instead, they've sent out announcements that they won't plunder from us or kill anyone. They want us to maintain order and not leave our houses easily." Just like that. Hui Yuhao was a little astonished. The Sun Moon Empire had greatly alleviated the suffering that ordinary citizens generally experienced in such cases by not touching them. If this was the case, it was a blessing amongst all the suffering. The lady said, "Yes. They have occupied Dragon City for many days, and only left behind a few soldiers to maintain order. After that, businessmen started to enter the city. The soldiers retreated from the city 2 days after arriving. You should have seen how there isn't much damage to the city at all. I only heard that a few Soul Master sects were forced to temporarily leave Dragon City by the Sun Moon Empire's troops. However, I'm not sure where they went." Hui Yuhao furrowed his brow and started to ponder. From the start, when Xu Qianran started the war and held many elite talents from the Soul Dueling Tournament captive, he thought that lives were bound to be lost in this war. Furthermore, the Holy Ghost Church aided the Sun Moon Empire. Given such a situation, how was it possible that they spared the citizens? This was something that Hui Yuhao hadn't expected. Before Hui Yuhao even asked anything else, the lady also got herself a glass of malt alcohol from behind the bar and said, "Those businessmen were also very weird. After entering the city, they didn't trade. Instead, they were giving out stuff. I heard that they gave many of the nobility in the city weird items. I heard they are related to soul tools. Their empire occupied our city, but they are giving us stuff. I don't get what's going on." Hui Yuhao was also confused when he heard her words. Why has something like this happened? What is the Sun Moon Empire planning to do? Hui Yuhao only got this information. He didn't obtain anything useful after speaking to other patrons. After inquiring about the mayor's house in the city, he left the inn upon finishing his alcohol. Right now, the sky had already turned dark, and the flow of people on the streets had evidently decreased. The temperature had also dropped significantly. To prevent himself from being too conspicuous, Hui Yuhao retrieved a coat from his storage-type soul tool and wore it. He slowly walked the streets. He had originally intended to find a place to stay, and would only go to the Earth Dragon sect after Nan Qiuqiu woke up. However, he had some new ideas now. He was curious. The Sun Moon Empire had not plundered the citizens nor touched them in any way. They even allowed businessmen to enter the city to give them stuff. What were the empire's intentions here? He went to the mayor's residence to take a look. At least there were people from the Sun Moon Empire there. Perhaps he could obtain some information. As he thought until here, Hu Yuhao turned into a dark alley and slowly disappeared into the dark under the concealment of his imitation. The mayor's residence was located in the city center, just like in most other cities. The mayor's residence looked pretty big, and was visible from afar. There were 2 soldiers standing at the entrance. They wore thick winter wear. Hu Yuhao jumped up and silently entered the residence. He moved like a falling leaf, and didn't alarm anyone. The residence was very quiet. It was only after a while that a patrol of troops could be seen passing by. Hu Yuhao snuck in and quickly came to the core structure of the residence. He drifted up towards a second-story room that was lit. At the same time, he unleashed his spiritual power, engulfing the entire residence. He didn't believe there were any spiritual detectors here. Very soon, he quickly grasped the situation in the residence. There were about 150 troopers inside this residence. Of them, 20 were soul engineers. Their cultivations were slightly weak. There were only 2 or 3 ringed soul engineers. In the central room of the residence, there was a 6-ringed soul emperor. Hu Yuhao could only tell if he was a soul engineer by seeing him directly. He's only a soul emperor, but is taking charge of the entire city. The Sun Moon Empire is really throwing caution to the wind. As he thought, Hu Yuhao drifted up and charged towards the room where the soul emperor was. Very soon, he was outside the door. Given the number of people that were in this residence, he was absolutely confident of defeating all of them by himself. However, he didn't want to alarm anyone. He remained quiet outside the window. His spiritual power was focused inside the room, and he silently listened and observed. There was a 50-year-old soul emperor reading some documents in the room and nodding occasionally. To only be a soul emperor at such an age meant that he had no future. Furthermore, Hu Yuhao also sensed the presence of soul tools in the room. Undoubtedly, he had to be a Class 6 soul engineer. Someone came. Hu Yuhao felt something, and sensed a few people outside the residence. From their dress, it seemed like they were all businessmen instead of military personnel. These people quickly entered the residence, after sending word of their arrival, before rushing into the room where this soul emperor was. "Sir, people from the Sun Moon Chamber of Commerce are here," a soldier respectfully reported from outside the room. "All right. Let them in," the Soul Emperor said calmly. The few businessmen were led into the room under the guidance of the soldier. At the same time, they bowed towards the Soul Emperor. "How is it? How's the plan going?" the Soul Emperor asked. A lanky businessman replied, "We experienced some difficulty at the start. The nobility of the Heavenly Soul Empire discriminated against us. However, after you sent out instructions not to confiscate their land and wealth, they didn't dare to openly express their hate towards us even if they secretly hate us. They only resisted our efforts in the shadows. Over these few days, we've already demonstrated how magical soul tools can be, which I believe is slowly moving them. This is especially true for our thermal radiators, which I believe they are most interested in. Thermal radiators can greatly conserve costly coal. Every other week, we'll just need a soul engineer to pour in his soul power. That'll be sufficient to power a thermal radiator, to keep a plot of land not bigger than 500 square meters warm. We can even avoid the smell of burning coal." They are all very surprised. The Soul Emperor nodded in satisfaction and responded, "All right, continue to advertise. Give them everything. Don't feel heartache over that. The Marshal has mentioned that even though we'll experience some temporary monetary losses, they'll eventually be reliant on us once they adapt to a life of soul tools, and won't be willing to return to their obsolete lives. After we win over the nobility, and convince them to work for us, we'll then turn our efforts to the citizens. In a few years, we'll win the hearts of the entire city. Yes. The businessman nodded respectfully. After this, they carried out a series of reports. They were talking about how to transport soul tools into the city for the noble families, and teaching them how to use them. They were also talking about how to move the nobility, as well as who were the ones who had been moved, and who were the ones who were still very stubborn. The entire report lasted roughly an hour before the businessman left. After sending them to the door, the mayor returned to his room and muttered in awe to himself, "Marshal, you are farsighted. This method is much better than performing a massacre. The Sun Moon Empire can't just rely on military power to rule the entire continent. This method to use soul tools to win the hearts of the people is indeed impressive. We've lessened the number of troops in the city, making them relax their guard. After that, we used soul tool technology to infiltrate their lives, although we're the ones who control the core technologies. In the future, there'll only be the Sun Moon Empire. The funny thing is that the Heavenly Soul Empire, Star Luo Empire, and Do Ling Empire are still trying to resist us. Perhaps they'll discover in a few years that their citizens in the territories we've occupied are no longer loyal to them." Ha ha, brilliant. This is indeed brilliant. The Marshal is indeed the person I admire the most. Conquering hearts without using force. That's the most advanced of all strategies. Hui Yuhao stood outside for 2 hours and listened to everything. After listening to this point, his expression had already turned slightly pale. Impressive. This Marshal that is talking about is too impressive. Using soul tool technology as a means of infiltration. What kind of brilliant idea is that? The air outside was extremely cold, but Hui Yuhao was dripping with perspiration. An overt plot, it was a true overt plot. Perhaps he could destroy everything in Dragon City with all his strength. However, if the Sun Moon Empire did the same throughout the entire Heavenly Soul Empire, there was no way he could stop them unless he could drive them out quickly. Who exactly was this Marshal? He actually had such a strategy. He was indeed a brilliant strategist. Hui Yuhao had seen Xu Tianran before. He didn't have a good impression of him. Without a doubt, Xu Tianran was an anti-hero. However, it was perhaps because of his disability that he seemed very sinister and vicious. Right now, the strategy that Hui Yuhao heard of was definitely something that an anti-hero couldn't have thought up. This was a true overt plot. It was upright, but perhaps only effective in the long term. However, if it worked, it would be extremely effective. If they succeeded, the Heavenly Soul Empire would find it extremely challenging to regain hold of the territories they had lost. Given the current situation in all the empires, the foundation of every empire was the nobility. The nobility controlled almost all the resources in an empire. The most powerful of the nobility were naturally the imperial families of each empire. This was the foundation of a monarchy. This was why the Sun Moon Empire had a very specific target. First, they chose to penetrate the hearts of the nobility of the Heavenly Soul Empire. Once the nobility slowly sided with the Sun Moon Empire, and helped them promote soul tool technology in their own empire, they could only be subjected to manipulation, given that they didn't possess any core technologies. They would forever be reliant on the Sun Moon Empire. The longer they were under occupation, the more evident this would become. This was too terrifying. The person who came up with this strategy left Hui Yuhao in awe. There weren't any massacres. It was through pure soul tool technology penetration that the Sun Moon Empire demonstrated their advantage to the fullest. Before today, Hu Yuhao would never have expected the Sun-Moon Empire to use such a method of invasion. How should he react to such a strategy? Hu Yuhao silently left the residence and found a hotel to stay the night. He was sleepless the entire night. It was only when the sky had already brightened that Hu Yuhao retracted his thoughts. To him, it was fine that he couldn't sleep the entire night. It was just that he couldn't think of a proper way to deal with the Sun-Moon Empire's strategy, even though he had been thinking the entire night. What an overt plot! It was an overt plot that one found difficult to counteract. It wasn't completely foolproof. The simplest way of dealing with it was to quickly reclaim all the lost territories. At the same time, the Sun-Moon Empire had to be stopped. It was only through this way that they could possibly hang on. However, what about the long term? Within the Sun-Moon Empire's borders, the empire had already promoted soul tool technology to ordinary citizens. Furthermore, it was extremely difficult to reclaim the cities that they had taken from the Heavenly Soul Empire. In the area of soul tools, the Sun-Moon Empire was simply leading by too much. As time passed, the cities that had fallen to the Sun-Moon Empire would likely yield to the Sun-Moon Empire even if they didn't attack, and only maintained the current situation. With more resources and support, the Sun-Moon Empire's soul tool technology would advance faster and faster. This would further the gap between them and the other empires of the original Doluo continent. The current peak of soul tool technology right now was the Death God. However, the Death God was undoubtedly an exception. It was a soul tool that everyone feared. It could only be operated after killing people. One Death God wasn't considered too terrifying to Hu Yuhao. Its threat would cease to exist once the soldiers of the Sun-Moon Empire couldn't handle it anymore. However, soul tool technology was continuously improving. As it continued to develop, there would be a day in the future where it could possibly threaten titled Doluo, and even ultimate Doluo. If that was the case, the Sun-Moon Empire's rule over the entire continent was bound to happen. Hu Yuhao didn't reject soul tool technology. He was also a soul engineer. As soul tool technology kept on developing, it represented societal progress. It was an evolution of the entire Doluo continent. However, he didn't wish to see the Sun-Moon Empire ruling over the entire Doluo continent. This was something that he couldn't accept. However, there wasn't any stopping them. Over the past few thousand years, the three empires of the original Doluo continent had already told him the answer using the current situation, that they were facing closing their empire and refusing to accept development as a reality, as well as unwilling to learn the qualities of others. The end result was that they were on the verge of becoming obsolete. The three empires of the original Doluo continent were too huge. All the authority lay in the hands of the nobility. Even if the imperial families wanted to promote soul tool development, it wasn't something that was effective in the short term. Most noble families were still discriminative towards soul tools. Perhaps the only hope lay in the academy. Shrek was only a city. It was mainly led by Shrek Academy. Over the past 10 years, ever since Elder Mu had recognized the importance of developing soul tools, and after Elder Xian had taken the reins, Shrek Academy had been continuously developing its soul tool department, and the Tang sect was established to encourage the speedy development of Shrek City. Furthermore, there weren't any noble families in Shrek City. Perhaps the future Shrek was the only hope left for the original Doluo continent. After thinking until here, Hu Yuhao seemed to have thought of something. There was something extra in his head. However, he couldn't tell what it was yet. Just as he was gradually clearing his thoughts, his spiritual sea moved slightly. Nan Qiuqiu was awake. Nan Qiuqiu looked very depressed as she exited his spectral demiplane. Hu Yuhao smiled as he asked, "What's wrong, Qiuqiu?" Nan Qiuqiu looked at the weather outside and said, "Surely this isn't the second day already, right?" Hui Yuhao shrugged. Nan Qiuqiu snorted and said, "What's so impressive about bullying me? Your spiritual power is just a little stronger. There'll be a day where I'll surpass you." When she said that last sentence, she didn't seem to have any confidence at all. Hui Yuhao didn't mock her. He only smiled and said, "I'm waiting for that day to come. How are you feeling? Are you feeling unwell?" Nan Qiuqiu snorted and replied, "No. I'm great." For someone who doesn't know how to appreciate beauty, HMPH. Hui Yuhao shook his head helplessly. He didn't try to explain himself either. He believed that Nan Qiuqiu would understand his intentions in the future. "Let's go. I'll bring you back to your sect." After he finished speaking, Nan Qiuqiu started walking out, but Hui Yuhao stopped her and took her somewhere to eat first. After eating, they checked out of the inn and came to the streets of Dragon City. Nan Qiuqiu was very familiar with Dragon City. After making turns within the city, they came to the center of the city that was facing the north. She looked to the street sides and corners of walls. Evidently, she was still displeased with Hui Yuhao and refused to acknowledge him. Hui Yuhao was very quiet as he followed her. After walking for some time, Nan Qiuqiu's eyes brightened. She stopped in front of a cloth shop and twisted her head to Hui Yuhao before gesturing towards him. "Quick, come." Hui Yuhao hurried forward and entered this cloth shop behind Nan Qiuqiu. It was a little empty in the shop. Perhaps it was because it was still morning, and they had just opened shop. There was a shopkeeper at the counter, and there were 2 workers outside. Seeing Nan Qiuqiu, the shopkeeper evidently appeared to know her. His eyes brightened and he rushed over. After taking a few glances, he whispered, "Young mistress, you're finally here." Nan Qiuqiu also lowered her voice and asked, "Where's my mother?" The shopkeeper answered, "She's in the back." "This is." He was doubtful as he looked at Hui Yuhao. Nan Qiuqiu replied, "He's my friend. My mom knows him. Bring us to see her." "Yes." The shopkeeper led both of them to a small door and proceeded towards the backyard of the shop. Hui Yuhao thought to himself, "The foundation of the Earth Dragon sect is so deep in this city. It's not easy for the Sun Moon Empire to chase them away." Nan Shueishui had just finished her breakfast and was basking in the sun in the backyard. Seeing that Hui Yuhao and Nan Qiuqiu had arrived, she was delighted. She smiled as she received them. "Elder Nan." Hui Yuhao greeted her with a bow. Nan Qiuqiu stood at one side and shouted, "Good kid." Nan Shueishui glared at her daughter. "How can you take such advantage of him? Don't be so mischievous." Nan Qiuqiu laughed cheekily, and her displeasure at Hui Yuhao seemed to disappear. Hui Yuhao lowered his voice and said, "Elder, how is the situation in Dragon City? I heard that the Soul Master sects in the city have been taken away by the Sun Moon Empire." Nan Shueishui sighed and said, "It's too quick. In just a few months, the Sun Moon Empire have already occupied this city. Their powers are beyond our imagination." "You're right. Most of the large sects in Dragon City, apart from us, have been forced outside of Dragon City. The rest have also been taken away. The Sun Moon Empire has performed a clean sweep of the Soul Master sects in the city. However, it's fortunate that they've not done anything to the people. This is the reason why we've been able to preserve some of our resources. I'm sure there are others who are still here, but have yet to reveal themselves." Hui Yuhao furrowed his brow slightly and said, "I wonder what the Sun Moon Empire is planning by taking away so many of the Soul Master sects." Nan Shueishui laughed coldly and said, "What else can they want? They'll probably tempt them to join them. If it's not possible, they'll just kill all of them. There are only 2 possibilities. There'll be those who are cowardly and afraid of death. I heard that the Sun Moon Empire added 2 more Soul Engineer Legions after occupying the Heavenly Soul Empire's territories. These 2 Soul Engineer Legions were divided and sent to the original Soul Engineer Legions. The Soul Engineers in these legions are equipped with basic Soul tools and have become part of their fighting forces. This Sun Moon Empire is really devious. Those who lack backbone also deserve to be killed. They were fueling the war through what they'd won from the war. After Hu Yuhao listened to Nan Shueishue's words, he couldn't help but feel a sense of helplessness. After the Sun Moon Empire started its invasion, he felt that their strategy was flawless, and they completely had the upper hand. From the initial feint attack on the Star Luo Empire, to restrain them to the massive invasion of the Heavenly Soul Empire, to the series of targeted strategies later on, the Sun Moon Empire had achieved the greatest advantage in the shortest period of time. Marshal. Are those strategies devised by that marshal mentioned by the mayor? I didn't expect Xu Qianran to have such a powerful figure under him. I wonder what kind of clash will occur when we face him on the battlefield in the future. Nan Shueishue said, "Since you're here, let's exploit the opportunity that there aren't many Sun Moon Empire soldiers here right now and get things done. Come on, I'll bring you there." All right. Nan Shueishue dressed herself up and put on a bamboo hat with a veil before leading both of them out of the shop. She proceeded in a northerly direction. Nan Qiuqiu whispered to Hu Yuhao beside her. Before Dragon City was occupied, the Earth Dragon sect occupied the city's north, and the Heavenly Dragon sect occupied the city's south. We've never touched each other. The Heavenly Dragon sect is more powerful. Their sect leader is even a titled Doluo. I'm not sure what their situation is right now either. Nan Shueishue turned her head to Nan Qiuqiu and said, "Speaking of it, I'm really in awe of old Qianlong. When the Sun Moon Empire's troops arrived, that old fellow led his sect to defend the city along with the Dragon City Defense Army. I heard he killed many enemies. After the city was breached, the Heavenly Dragon sect suffered massive losses, and old Qianlong died in battle. I heard Yu Qianlong disappeared, but I'm not sure where." After hearing Nan Shueishue's words, Hu Yuhao and Nan Qiuqiu were both in awe too. Someone who defended the city until the very last moment deserved massive respect. If Yu Qianlong had run away, it meant that the lineage of the Heavenly Dragon sect could still be carried on. Nan Shueishue said heavily, "I have been fighting old Qianlong for my entire life, and have always been restrained by him. I didn't expect him to die earlier than me. The Heavenly Dragon sect has been half wiped out, while the remaining ones have been taken away. The hateful thing is that there were a few sects that secretly surrendered to the Sun Moon Empire. If they didn't open the city gate, things wouldn't have." Nan Shueishue turned more and more grim as she spoke until here. Nan Qiuqiu rushed forward a few steps and grabbed her hands. "Mom, we'll avenge Uncle Heavenly Dragon one day in the future. Your actions were right. We can't fight the Sun Moon Empire given our strength. It's only through surviving that we can take revenge in the future. Uncle Qianlong is sometimes too stubborn. If he were willing to listen to you and move to Shrek City, he wouldn't have." "Shut up!" Nan Shueishue shouted, and Nan Qiuqiu was stunned in place. Nan Shueishue looked very strict as she said, he wasn't being stubborn. He just couldn't give up the city. Dragon City is the place where the Heavenly Dragon and Earth Dragon sects were established. I couldn't lead the Earth Dragon sect to fight the enemy along with the Heavenly Dragon sect, and I'm very guilty over that. Unless I can avenge him one day, the Earth Dragon sect can never lift its head in front of the Heavenly Dragon sect again. I already regret my decision. If I had known, I would have been willing to fight to the death with the old Qianlong." As she spoke until here, her eyes filled with tears and she clenched her fists. Hu Yuhao sighed in his heart when he sensed Nan Shueishue's deadly aura. Seeing that the city where her sect had been established had been sacrificed, and her old friend and foe had died in battle, Nan Shui must be feeling very down. Elder Nan, we'll get Dragon City back. Elder Qianlong was a hero of Dragon City, and so are you. Hui Yuhao said sincerely. Nan Shui lowered her head slightly and gently shook it. She didn't say anything else, and turned around before continuing to walk forward. Nan Qiuqiu stuck out her tongue and looked scared. Her mother was normally very nice to her. She was hardly so strict. After passing streets and alleys, an extremely large courtyard appeared in their vision. After seeing this courtyard, both Nan Shui and Nan Qiuqiu seemed to be very sad. Undoubtedly, this was the Earth Dragon sect. There were seals all over the gate of the Earth Dragon sect, but no one was guarding it. Mom, there shouldn't be too many guards in the city. Why don't we kill them and snatch Dragon City back? Nan Qiuqiu said hatefully. Nan Shui glared at her and said, how is it so simple? If the Sun Moon Empire dared to put so few guards in the city, they must have their reasons. There's another announcement on the notice board at the side. If any Soul Master dares to revolt, they'll kill all the Soul Masters they took from Dragon City. If this wasn't the case, do you really think I would have waited until now? Scoundrel! Nan Qiuqiu shouted furiously. Nan Shui's eyes turned cold. Seeing that there wasn't anyone around looking at them, she nodded to the other two before drifting up. She entered the sect first. Hui Yuhao tugged Nan Qiuqiu's sleeves before they followed Nan Shui. It was a mess inside the Earth Dragon sect. Many areas had been damaged. There were broken walls all around. Evidently, the place had been ransacked. Nan Qiuqiu hadn't returned in a long time. Upon seeing the condition of the place, her eyes turned red, and she wanted to turn around and rush off. Nan Shui grabbed hold of her, but it took some effort to restrain her. We need to take care of business. Yu Hao was right. We'll come back one day. Nan Shui led both of them to the backyard of the Earth Dragon sect. It was a huge garden. Right now, the garden was in ruins. When the Sun Moon Empire's troops searched the place, the garden was greatly damaged. It would be difficult for it to return to its former look in the future. Nan Shui shut her eyes in torment as she saw all this. The Earth Dragon sect's legacy had been passed down for more than 1,000 years, but it died in her generation. Undoubtedly, she was in great pain right now. However, she didn't stop. She led the two of them to the depths of the backyard, where there was a well. Hui Yuhao was slightly moved as he came closer and closer to the well. He could subtly sense movements from the Ice Empress, and his own Ice Jade Empress Scorpion seemed to want to be released. There seemed to be something very attractive within the well. It's here. This is a cold spring. There is concentrated spiritual energy in this spring. It's very nourishing for soul masters. However, only the sect leaders of the Earth Dragon sect know about this. At the bottom of this spring, there is actually a cave. However, we've isolated it from the well using some mechanisms. Inside that cave, there are many exotic mineral stones. It's just that the temperature inside the cave is too low. Even our ancestors, that were titled Doluor, couldn't stay inside it for long. Our ancestor managed to mine a small mineral stone once. It contained a strong ice-type aura inside it. It also seemed to be a metal. This is why our ancestors believed that there is a mine inside this cave, a mine that contains an ice-type metal. As to its standard, we have no clue. As she spoke until here, Nan Shui looked at Hui Yuhao and said, Yuhao, your martial soul is of ultimate ice. You should be able to survive in this cave. If the stones below are of use to you, try to mine them. After all, we won't be back here anytime soon. Just take it as our contribution to the Tang sect. The Tang sect has been very nice to us in Shrek City. I hope we can work together more closely in the future. Thank you, Elder. Hui Yu Hao didn't stand on ceremony. Although the ice spring was a barrier, he could clearly sense that the stuff in the cave was indeed useful to him. Nan Shui told him how to open the cave in detail before saying, "Go on down. I'll guard this place with Chiu. Don't force it. Although you possess an ultimate ice martial soul, I almost got frozen when I tried to go down for even just a few seconds. The temperature below is simply too low. It doesn't seem like a human can handle it." "All right." Hui Yu Hao acknowledged her words. Nan Shui wouldn't warn him without reason. Naturally, he wouldn't be careless. After slightly adjusting his own state, he gestured to both Nan Shui and Nan Chiu before drifting up and dropping into the well. The moment he entered the well, a sinister cold breeze swept over him. However, the cold could only serve to strengthen Hui Yu Hao. Even without unleashing his martial soul, he wasn't affected at all. However, for safety's sake, Hui Yu Hao still unleashed his Ice Jade Empress Scorpion before entering the well, and used his Ice Empress armor. After a layer of diamond ice crystals covered his body, he sank deep into the spring. This video will end here.